A millionaire woman kicked out of luxury boutique returned an hour later in her private jet. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Madison Avenue as Victoria Chun stepped out of her modest Honda Civic, her sneakers hitting the pristine sidewalk of Manhattan's most exclusive shopping district. At 42, she had built a tech empire from her garage, but success hadn't changed her simple approach to life. Today, she wore faded jeans, a comfortable sweater, and her favorite worn sneakers, the same ones she'd worn during countless late nights coding the algorithms that would eventually make her worth $200 million. Victoria had a specific mission today. Her daughter Emma was graduating from Harvard next week, and she wanted to buy her something truly special, a piece from Elegance Parisienne, the boutique that celebrities and socialites frequented, known for its exclusive designer pieces and astronomical price tags. She had researched the store for weeks, knowing exactly which limited edition handbag would make Emma's eyes light up. The boutique's glass doors reflected the golden hour light, and through them, Victoria could see the gleaming interior, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and displays that looked more like art installations than retail spaces. She took a deep breath, knowing this world was foreign to her, but driven by love for her daughter Dot. As she pushed through the heavy glass doors, a soft chime announced her arrival. The interior was even more intimidating than she'd imagined. Everything sparkled under the warm lighting, and the air itself seemed to whisper of exclusivity and wealth. 3 impeccably dressed sales associates stood near the displays, their conversations halting as they noticed her entrance. The first associate, a tall woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, looked Victoria up and down with barely concealed disdain. Her colleague, a younger man with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, exchanged a knowing glance with the third associate, a middle-aged woman whose expression immediately shifted from professional politeness to cold dismissal. Victoria approached the nearest display, where the handbag she'd researched sat under spotlights like a crown jewel. It was beautiful Italian leather in a deep burgundy, with gold hardware that caught the light perfectly. She could already imagine Emma's face when she saw it. The blonde associate approached with measured steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. Her smile was thin and practiced, the kind reserved for people she considered beneath her clientele. "Excuse me," the associate said, her voice carrying just enough sweetness to mask the condescension underneath. "Are you perhaps looking for directions? There's a Target about 6 blocks north if you're looking for something more ... suitable." Victoria felt the words hit her like a physical blow. She had faced discrimination before as a woman in tech, as an immigrant's daughter building a business in America, but this casual cruelty still stung. She straightened her shoulders, drawing on the same strength that had carried her through rejection after rejection when she was seeking investors for her startup. "I'm here to purchase a gift for my daughter," Victoria replied calmly, her voice steady despite the flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. "I'd like to see that burgundy handbag in the display." The male associate let out a barely audible scoff, while the older woman approached with her arms crossed. The blonde associate's expression shifted to something approaching amusement. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our pieces start at $15,000, and most of our clientele makes appointments in advance. This particular bag is $35,000, and it's from our exclusive collection." The emphasis on exclusive was unmistakable. Victoria felt every eye in the store on her other customers had stopped browsing to watch the scene unfold. She could see their expensive clothing, their perfectly styled hair, their jewelry that probably cost more than most people's cars. And here she stood, looking like she had just finished running errands, which she had. "I understand the price," Victoria said, reaching into her simple canvas purse for her wallet. "I'd like to purchase it." The male associate actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed through the boutique. "Ma'am, perhaps you should consider our more accessible sister store. There's a lovely Coach outlet about 20 minutes away." Victoria's cheeks burned. She could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on her from every direction. Other customers were whispering now, their voices carrying just enough to make her aware of their amusement. She heard fragments. "How embarrassing. Security should handle this. What is she even doing here?" The blonde associate leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a helpful whisper. "Look, I'm trying to save you from embarrassment here. This isn't the place for people like you. There are plenty of nice stores where you'd be more comfortable." "People like me?" Victoria's voice was quiet, but there was steel in it now. "You know what I mean. People who shop at regular stores. People who don't understand what this level of luxury means. Our clientele expects a certain atmosphere." The older associate nodded in agreement. "We have a reputation to maintain. Our regular customers, the wives of senators, Hollywood actresses, European royalty, they come here for the exclusivity. They expect to shop among their peers." Victoria looked around the boutique one more time, taking in the faces watching her, some with pity, others with amusement, all with the kind of superiority that comes from never having to prove your worth. She thought about Emma, about the years of 18-hour days, about the nights she'd fallen asleep at her desk while building the company that would eventually employ over 3,000 people. "I see," Victoria said finally. "So you're refusing to sell to me?" The blonde associate's smile became almost predatory. "We're not refusing anything. We're simply suggesting that you might be happier shopping somewhere more appropriate to your lifestyle." "My lifestyle," Victoria repeated, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Yes, look, there's nothing wrong with being ordinary. Most people are. But this boutique caters to extraordinary people with extraordinary means. Surely you can understand that?" The word ordinary hung in the air like a slap. Victoria felt something shift inside her, not anger, exactly, but a cold determination she hadn't felt since the early days of her company when everyone told her she'd never succeed. She looked at each of the associates in turn, memorizing their faces. Then she glanced at the other customers, some of whom were now openly staring, clearly enjoying the spectacle. She saw a woman in a fur coat whispering to her friend, both of them looking at Victoria with the kind of fascination usually reserved for car accidents. "I understand perfectly," Victoria said finally. "Thank you for making your position so clear." She turned toward the door, her worn sneakers silent on the marble floor. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversations resuming, the soft laughter, the collective sigh of relief that the disruption to their exclusive world had been handled so efficiently. As she reached for the door handle, she heard the blonde associate call out, her voice carrying a note of false concern. "Ma'am, there's a lovely Macy's just a few blocks away. They have a sales section that might be perfect for you." Victoria paused, her hand on the cool metal of the door handle. She turned back one last time, looking at the boutique that had just dismissed her so casually, at the people who had judged her worth by her appearance, at the associates who had made it clear that people like her weren't welcome in their world. "Thank you," she said simply. "You've been very educational." The door chimed softly as she stepped back onto Madison Avenue, the late afternoon air hitting her face like a promise. She walked slowly to her Honda Civic, her mind already working, already planning. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking at the boutique through her windshield, watching the associates through the glass as they congratulated themselves on handling the situation so smoothly. Victoria pulled out her phone and made a series of calls. First to her assistant, then to her pilot, then to her personal shopper in Paris. Each conversation was brief, professional, and precise. She spoke in the same calm tone she used during board meetings, The same voice that had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As she drove away from Madison Avenue, Victoria caught sight of herself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at her was the same one who had built a company from nothing, who had fought for every success, who had learned long ago that respect wasn't given, it was earned. And sometimes it had to be taken. She had been ordinary once. She had been dismissed and underestimated and told she didn't belong. But she had also learned something that the people in that boutique hadn't. Appearances could be deceiving, and the most dangerous people were often the ones who looked the most harmless. The sun was setting over Manhattan as Victoria drove toward Teterboro Airport, her mind already focused on the next chapter of her day. She had been humiliated, but she had also been underestimated. And in her experience, that was when she did her best work. Exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes after Victoria Chun had walked out of Elegance Parisienne, the boutique's afternoon rhythm was disrupted by an unusual sound, the deep, unmistakable roar of jet engines overhead. The associates paused in their conversations, looking up instinctively, but quickly returned to their tasks. This was Manhattan after all. Private jets were as common as taxicabs for their clientele. Outside on Madison Avenue, however, something unprecedented was happening. A sleek Gulfstream G650 had just landed at the small private airfield that served the city's most exclusive needs, a facility that most people didn't even know existed, hidden behind the facade of ordinary buildings, just blocks from the boutique district. The blonde associate who had dismissed Victoria was arranging a display of diamond earrings when she noticed the commotion outside. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, phones out, all pointing in the same direction. She moved to the window, her curiosity piqued by the unusual level of excitement. What she saw made her blood run cold. A convoy of black SUVs was pulling up to the boutique, their tinted windows reflecting the evening lights. But it wasn't the vehicles that made her throat tighten with recognition. It was the woman stepping out of the lead car. Victoria Chun looked entirely different, yet unmistakably the same. Gone were the faded jeans and comfortable sweater. In their place was a tailored black suit that screamed bespoke craftsmanship, Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and jewelry that caught the light with the kind of fire that only came from genuine, flawless stones. Her hair, which had been in a simple ponytail earlier, was now styled in an elegant updo that framed her face perfectly. But it was her expression that made the associate's stomach drop. Victoria wore the same calm, controlled look she'd had when she left, but now it was backed by something that made the air itself seem to vibrate with potential energy. The male associate appeared at his colleague's shoulder, his usual smug expression melting into confusion and then dawning horror. Is that the woman from earlier? Before anyone could answer, the boutique's doors opened and Victoria walked in, followed by an entourage that looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. There was a woman in an expensive suit carrying a tablet and speaking quietly into a Bluetooth headset. A man in a perfectly tailored shirt was taking notes on his phone. Two other individuals, clearly lawyers by their bearing and briefcases, flanked the group. The personal shopper, a personal shopper, elegantly dressed woman who looked like she belonged in the pages of Vogue, carried a leather portfolio that probably contained more money than the boutique made in a month. But it was Victoria herself who commanded the room. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove herself to anyone, the kind of presence that made people instinctively step aside. This was not the woman who had been dismissed an hour ago. This was someone who owned boardrooms, who made decisions that affected thousands of lives, who had built an empire from nothing and wasn't about to let anyone forget it. The blonde associate felt her mouth go dry. She exchanged panicked glances with her colleagues, all of whom were suddenly very busy pretending to organize already perfect displays. Victoria approached the same display she had been interested in before, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the kind of authority that made everyone in the boutique turn to look. She didn't acknowledge the associates who had dismissed her. Instead, she spoke to her personal shopper in a voice that carried clearly through the suddenly silent boutique. "The burgundy handbag I mentioned, the one from their exclusive collection. And I'll need you to assess their entire spring collection. My daughter's graduation gift is just the beginning." The personal shopper nodded, making notes on her tablet. "Of course, Ms. Chen. Should I arrange for private viewing of their reserve pieces as well?" "Yes. And I want everything they have in their Italian leather collection. Size doesn't matter. I have several people to shop for." The boutique's other customers had stopped pretending to shop and were now openly staring. The whispered conversations from earlier had given way to a silence so complete that every word of Victoria's conversation was audible throughout the space. The older associate, the one who had talked about maintaining their reputation, finally found her voice. She approached Victoria with hesitant steps, her earlier confidence replaced by something that looked dangerously close to panic. "Ma'am, we may have had a misunderstanding earlier." "Perhaps we could." Victoria turned to look at her, and the associate's words died in her throat. Victoria's expression was polite, even kind, but there was something in her eyes that made it clear. She remembered every single word that had been spoken to her. "A misunderstanding?" Victoria's voice was calm, almost curious. "I don't think so. I think you were very clear about your position." The man with the tablet stepped forward. "Ms. Chen, I have the information you requested. Elegance Parisienne has 3 locations here in Manhattan, 1 in Beverly Hills, and 1 in Paris. Annual revenue is approximately $42 million. The parent company is looking for investors to expand internationally." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. And the building lease? Renewable every 5 years. Current lease expires in 18 months. The blonde associate felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This conversation was heading somewhere she didn't want to imagine, and she was beginning to understand that she had made a mistake that might cost her much more than her commission. Victoria's personal shopper had begun examining the merchandise with the kind of professional efficiency that spoke of years of experience with the world's most exclusive boutiques. She photographed items, made notes, and occasionally held pieces up to the light to examine their craftsmanship. "The quality is acceptable," she reported to Victoria. "Not exceptional, but acceptable for the price point. The Italian leather collection is genuine, though the craftsmanship is a step below what you'd find in Milan." "I see." Victoria walked slowly through the boutique, her entourage following at a respectful distance. She examined displays, touched fabrics, and generally behaved like someone conducting a very thorough inspection. "And their customer service training?" The personal shopper glanced meaningfully at the associates, who were still frozen in various poses of barely concealed terror. "Based on what I've observed, I'd say it needs significant improvement." Victoria paused in front of the burgundy handbag that had started this entire encounter. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned to address the boutique for the first time since she'd entered. "I came here an hour ago to buy a gift for my daughter's graduation. I was told that people like me weren't welcome here, that this boutique caters to extraordinary people with extraordinary means, that I should shop somewhere more appropriate to my lifestyle." Her voice carried clearly through the boutique, and every word landed like a physical blow on the associates who had dismissed her. The other customers were now openly staring, their phones out, recording what was clearly going to be a viral moment. "I was told I was too ordinary for this establishment." Victoria's assistant stepped forward with her tablet. "Ms. Chun, I have the numbers you requested. Your personal net worth is currently listed at $230 million. Your company, Tech Solutions, employs over 3,000 people across 12 countries. Last year's revenue was $1.2 billion. The silence in the boutique was deafening. The blonde associate felt her knees go weak, while the male associate looked like he might actually faint. The older associate was clutching a display case as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Miss Chun," the personal shopper continued, "I should mention that your foundation donated $4 million to educational initiatives last year alone. And your scholarship program has put over 200 students through college." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I suppose that could be considered extraordinary by some standards." She turned back to the associates, her expression still calm, still polite. "But you're right about one thing, I am ordinary. I'm an ordinary woman who worked 18-hour days to build something from nothing. I'm an ordinary mother who wants to buy her daughter a graduation gift. I'm an ordinary person who believes that respect should be earned, not assumed." The blonde associate finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Ms. Chen, we made a terrible mistake. Please, if you'll give us another chance." "A chance?" Victoria's voice remained steady, but there was something in it now that made everyone in the boutique hold their breath. "You had a chance. You had a chance to treat a customer with basic human dignity. You had a chance to do your job professionally. You had a chance to not judge someone based on their appearance." She walked closer to the display case, her reflection multiplied in the glass surfaces around her. "Instead, you chose to humiliate someone. You chose to make assumptions. You chose to create a scene that made me feel small and unwelcome." The personal shopper checked her tablet. "Miss Chun, I have the corporate contact information for the parent company. Should I arrange a meeting to discuss potential acquisition?" "Yes, please do. I think this location would make an excellent addition to our real estate portfolio. We could convert it into something more inclusive, perhaps a community center or a space for young entrepreneurs." The color drained from every associate's face. The blonde associate stepped forward, her hands actually shaking. "Please, Miss Chun, we need these jobs. We made a mistake, a terrible, horrible mistake, but please don't punish everyone for our ignorance." Victoria studied her for a long moment, and for the first time since she'd entered, her expression softened slightly. "You're right. Not everyone should be punished for the actions of a few." She turned to her assistant. "Please make sure that when we discuss this acquisition, we consider the employment of any staff members who treated customers with respect and dignity. I'm sure we can find positions for people who understand the value of basic human kindness." Then she looked directly at the three associates who had dismissed her. "As for those who believe that someone's worth can be determined by their appearance, well, I suppose they'll have to find somewhere else to practice their discrimination." Victoria's personal shopper had finished her assessment and approached with a tablet full of images and notes. "Miss Chun, I've selected several pieces that would be appropriate for your daughter's graduation. The total comes to approximately $250,000. Should I arrange for payment and delivery?" "Yes, please. And while you're at it, purchase their entire spring collection. I'm sure I can find good homes for everything." She paused, looking around the boutique one final time. "Oh, and I'd like to buy that burgundy handbag as well. The one I originally came in to purchase. I think Emma will love it." The transaction took less than 15 minutes. Victoria stood calmly while her team handled the details, occasionally checking her phone or speaking quietly to her assistant. The associates who had dismissed her earlier stood frozen, watching their entire world shift beneath their feet. When everything was finalized, Victoria walked toward the door, her entourage following. She paused at the threshold, the same spot where she had been told there was a Target 6 blocks north, as she was looking for something more suitable. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the boutique. "This has been very educational." As the doors closed behind her, the boutique erupted in chaos. The associates who had dismissed her began frantically making phone calls, trying to reach their corporate offices, trying to explain what had just happened. The other customers were already posting videos to social media, their phones capturing Every moment of what would become one of the most viral, never judge a book by its cover, stories of the year. Outside on Madison Avenue, Victoria paused beside her convoy of vehicles. The sun had set completely now, and the city lights reflected off the windows of the boutique. She could see the chaos inside, the frantic phone calls, the realization of what had just occurred. Her assistant approached with a tablet. "Miss Chun, I have the parent company's CEO on the line. He's very eager to discuss the situation." Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn all day. "Tell him I'll be in touch. But first, I need to call my daughter. I have some very good news about her graduation gift." As the convoy pulled away from the boutique, Victoria settled back in her seat, the burgundy handbag beside her. She thought about Emma, about the lessons she'd learned today, about the importance of never letting anyone make you feel small. She had been called ordinary, dismissed as unsuitable, told she didn't belong. But she had also proven that the most extraordinary people often come in the most ordinary packages. And sometimes, the most powerful response to being underestimated is simply to show up and prove them wrong. The boutique grew smaller in the rearview mirror, its lights fading into the Manhattan evening. But the lesson it had taught about respect, about dignity, about the danger of judging people by their appearance would echo far beyond Madison Avenue, reaching anyone who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or told they didn't belong. Victoria Chun had walked into that boutique as an ordinary woman looking to buy her daughter a gift. She had left as something far more powerful, a reminder that true worth isn't measured by appearance, and that the most dangerous people to underestimate are often the ones who look the most harmless. The private jet waited at the airfield, ready to take her home to her daughter, to her life, to her world where success was measured not by the clothes you wore or the car you drove, but by the lives you touched and the differences you made. And somewhere in Manhattan, in a boutique, that would never be the same. 3 associates were learning a lesson they would never forget. Never judge a book by its cover, because you never know when that book might be written by someone who has the power to rewrite your entire story.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.